Hello and welcome to this special presentation of In the Money Media and the Breeders' Cup. I'm your host, Peter Thomas Fornital, back with you from the Brooklyn bunker once again. After a little 1 week absence, we are back with Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge Diaries, BCBC Diaries. And on this show, we're going to check in with one of last weekend's qualifiers, as well as one of our regular players. That's how we're going to start things off. But before we get to that, got to give some shout outs to the folks who've been winning seats, and there have been so many of them, as the summer meets and these days used to be extremely depressing, I'll be honest. But now with the dead run to the Breeders' Cup, all these Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge seats on offer, it's been a lot easier to sort of get the mind right and focused for all the excitement to come. Let's flash back to last weekend via horseplayers.com, where there's all manner of feeders and qualifiers. We gave away seats to Joe Davidson, Jeff Tracy, Jeff Hartz, and then partial seats to David Bassler, William Smith, and Nicholas Nose via Monmouth Park and Monmouth Park's Saratoga qualifier that also had racing from Monmouth. It was Ryan Petruniak, Brett Kelly, Lou Ferrolito, Phil Matzat getting the job done, and then also through twinspires.com, Tim Yoler. We move ahead to this weekend, where we saw Kenneth Murphy, Dave Nichols, hear from him a little bit later on, Dan Brockman, James Moore, and Kevin Newell getting the job done, with partials going to Bill Inman, Rick Broth, and Cliff Pardo. Meanwhile, out at Del Mar, 6 other players punched their tickets. Nissan Gabe, former champion, his second seat at least he is qualified for this year. Joe Vita, Mark Evans, Kevin Bogart, Corey Shore, and Blake Jesse all got $10,000 BCBC seats. If you missed out on those opportunities, don't worry. There are more coming up. Horseplayers.com, of course, but then also on the 7th of September, Kentucky Downs, King of the Turf. You can play this one online via TVG Express Bet, or if you're up in Canada, HPIBet.com, twinspires.com, having another qualifier this Saturday as well. And then next weekend, our friends at Woodbine are back. The Woodbine Mile Day contest. We've been having fun running some qualifiers for them over on our contestjockey.com website. That one you can also buy in and play directly, ExpressBet or HPIBet.com. If you have questions about your qualifying journey for the Breeders' Cup, do not hesitate to reach out to me personally. Happy to be your contest Sherpa, guide you along the way. You can find me in themoneypodcast.com. The contact page over there goes straight to my email. Without further ado, let's bring in one of our regular players, man who's had some success lately, hasn't qualified directly for the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge yet, but he may have done the next best thing. Let's bring him in now to talk about it from San Diego, the part of the world where I just was. Here is Jackson Muniz. Jackson, what's going on, my friend?
I'm clinging on these last few days of summer, man. Now that Saratoga's over, we got 4 days left at Del Mar. I'm going to be really depressed coming next Monday. I'll tell you that much.
It's not easy, especially when you're in one of the two places. It's not easy. I guess I'm spoiled a bit because I am going to continue all this fun travel. I'm heading down to Nashville on Saturday to go to that King of the Turf. It definitely is a time where there used to be a serious recovery period, but at least you've ended up the meet on a good note. Yeah. Let's start out by talking about Horse Players Happy Hour last week, where you had some success. Tell us how that contest went down.
Yeah, it's been a rough stretch for me the last few weeks, but I was really excited about last week's because we've been doing Del Mar and Saratoga, which has been awesome. And then last week we threw in Kentucky Downs too. So it was just 90 minutes of action. It was boom, 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 boom. It was great. I loved it. And just early on, I had 3 entries and I hit a 19-1 shot, I think, on 2 of them right out of the gates. And then came right back and got another 15-1 shot on 1 of the entries, which vaulted me right towards the top out of the first 4 races. I think I was in 2nd or 3rd. And then unfortunately, we just couldn't quite get anything going after that. I think it mostly chalked out, and I kind of just maybe got an extra $10 the rest of the contest, but that was good enough to hang on for 4th. I was alive going the last race to a 9-1 shot that would have got me into the 2nd spot, but unfortunately it didn't work out. But again, I ended up getting 4th place. Can't complain. Got some tour points. I actually was looking at the leaderboard, Pete. the season-long one. And there's a Jason Muniz and a Jackson Muniz right next to each other. I don't know if there's a different guy who's got a very similar name to me or not, but we might want to look into that one.
Interesting. You think there may be a typo
I'm
there?
hoping there is.
We'll do this production meeting outside the show, and we'll make sure that we'll figure out what's going on there. Hopefully, no missing points for you.
Yeah.
If there are, we'll figure it out. Anybody with questions about the Horse Players Happy Hour leaderboard, feel free to reach out to me directly. Once again, inthemoneypodcast.com, the contact page there will get you straightened away with your questions. Still about 4 weeks left to go, and all to play for on Horse Players Happy Hour. Join us on Thursdays. Jackson mentioned being able to get those tour points. You also moved on to the Saturday contest over at horseplayers.com. The top 10% on Horse Players Happy Hour, which happens every Thursday, move on to the Saturday qualifier. That didn't work out, but you had another story to tell us that worked out a little bit better. Maybe we'll even show a replay here if we have the opportunity, Jackson. Tell us about this big score you had to sort of brighten up this last part of the Del Mar meet.
Yeah, well, I got really lucky because you and I talked about the Woodbine Kings Plate Day. It was supposed to happen 3 Saturdays ago now, and then it got rained out halfway through the card. They brought it back on Friday, and they rearranged a bunch of the races. So all of a sudden, the sequences had totally changed, and it ended up working out in my favor a lot. So I ended up playing the cross country pick 5 that day, and I think the first 2 races, favorite, it was at Woodbine and Monmouth. And then we went to the stakes race at Saratoga. I can't think of the name, but Raging Sea ran down Idiomatic somehow. I didn't have Idiomatic. Idiomatic ran the biggest race of her life, and I was very fortunate that Raging Sea got there. Pratt got his one of million stakes wins on the meet. And then we got to the Kings Plate, and I was 4 deep in that race, and we both loved the Caitlin Clark horse.
Caitlin Her Greatness.
Yes.
Yep.
And I bet her heavy on the side because I knew I was already 4 deep in the cross country, and she was my top pick, and she ran down the favorite that day. So now I'm alive to 2 horses in the final race. It was a two-year-old race at Woodbine again, and it was paying $17,000 to these 2 10-to-1 shots. And I'm like, okay, here we go. There's a 3 to 5 horse in the race. Yeah, well, maybe you get lucky. And the horse I thought a better chance was the 4 horse. Her name was Shifty. And she went off at 11 to 1. She had a big kick in her first race I talked about. She broke terrible, made a huge move, and then kind of flattened out. That was against the boys, and she showed up in the stakes race. Like, why is she running this race? Obviously, they think there's more here. And they come out of the gates, and she found herself on the lead. I don't know how she got there. Nobody else wanted it. And they come around the stretch, easy lead, and I'm watching with my brothers, and I'm getting all mad because the jockey is just sitting on her like this, and I'm like, push her, like, come on, go do something. And then my brother's like, dude, she's got a ton of horse, she's got it. And sure enough, finally at the 8th pole, he starts pushing her, and she just pulls away from the field, and it was like, it was awesome. We were just screaming, woke up the entire neighborhood, I'm sure, but it was great. We were ecstatic. I hit the pick 5, I hit the double for another 1,500, I think, and win money. It was great. It was awesome day.
That is exciting stuff. Very, very cool. Next time you're in that situation, get somebody to film you. I want to be able to see you yelling next to that video. But very, very cool. Winning over. What was your total haul on the day, would you say?
I think it was ended up being 17,000. I got taxed for the first time in my life. It was great. It was the first time I'm ever going to be happy about it. I got taxed. That's a win. So it can't complain at all. Can't complain.
Yeah, I mean, the personal ensign, you definitely had a little bit of luck there with Raging Sea. It was just probably smart to acknowledge that. But hey, you put yourself in a position, you got the job done. Any thought to setting aside some more of that money for other qualifying opportunities, or even just to buy in? Because that's something, of course, you can do. We encourage people to play in all these qualifiers we're talking about, but you can also sort of create your own qualifier in cash if the circumstances come to hand. What's your attitude about that money going forward?
I think I'm going to look towards more qualifiers. I don't think I'm going to buy in for the full amount, but I know there's a few more coming up. Twin Spires has a couple. I've always wanted to go to Keeneland. So now that I won this, I'm thinking about maybe doing a trip out there. And I know they have a couple contests coming up in the middle of October. They have 2 on the same weekend. So maybe I'll try to buy into the one on Friday and qualify my way into the one on Saturday. That'd be an perfect world. That would be my plan. But we'll see what happens.
We'll be following the story, my friend. Congrats on the big hit, and we will have you back very soon to talk about more of your journey for these Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge Diaries.
Sounds good, Pete. Thank you.
Next up on the show, want to bring in one of our recent horseplayers.com qualifiers for the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge. Also a man I'm happy to call a friend. Dave Nichols, what's going on, my friend? What's happening?
Not too much. Just got home from the final weekend of Saratoga and ready to take a little bit of a breather, but it was a fun weekend.
Let's do a little contest recap. What was the big race for you on Saturday? How did you punch your ticket? And hey, maybe even with some video magic, we can run a replay here.
All right, it was an exciting race for me to see, so I'll watch it again. Absolutely. It was the Pacific Classic, which was the second to last race of the contest. I think I was hanging around like fifth or sixth, something like that. And I had Mixto, who was a huge long shot in there. And, if you look at his record, he certainly didn't look like the most talented horse in the race. But with 10 furlong races, I kind of focus on more who wants the distance. I think he had run 2 or 3 of his last 4 races were 1.25 miles, something like that. He ran okay. And then a lot of the other horses in the race didn't appear to want 1.25 miles. And to be completely honest, I was very surprised when he was laying second. Del Mar has been a little bit of a conveyor belt, so I was worried about that aspect of it. But once he was second, I was like, he only has to pass one horse, and that horse hasn't proven that he wants the distance. So, it worked out very well, to say the least.
I like that idea of looking at 10 furlong form in isolation. I mean, you had the fastest horse in the race, quote unquote, Dr. Venkman. Not sure he can get 1.25 miles in the back of a flatbed truck based on what we saw at Del Mar on Saturday. Meanwhile, Mixto gets it done. You get it done, punching your ticket to the BCBC. How many times have you played in this event before?
I think it's 4 times. This would be the 4th or 5th time, something like that.
Any success to this point?
No. I've only had one real, what I would call close call, which was 2018. I went all in on the last race with the money I had left and had a big exact on Thunder Snow over Accelerate. They were coming down the stretch 1-2, and I was hopeful, and Thunder Snow kind of petered out at the 16th pole. So, it'd be nice to have another, real rooting interest down the stretch of the last race with the BCBC on the line again.
What has your approach been in the past to the BCBC strategy-wise? What might you do differently this your 5th time of asking, as it were?
I tend to be a guy who plays a lot of doubles, some heavy doubles. One thing that I think when I play like $2 win place, I'm always looking for value. But recent Breeders' Cups, a lot of favorites have been winning. So maybe I'm probably shooting for the moon a little bit too much and need to be a little more pragmatic in the doubles that I play. So.
It is amazing seeing the prices of some of these horses that have won several BCBCs of recent vintage. Matt Miller, in his new book, A Better Way of Thinking, available over at betterwayofthinking.com, details it in some of the ones he's been involved in. And it's less about needing to find the clever horse the way you did with Mixto, and maybe more about finding those right favorites or right long shots to include with favorites to just absolutely pound it. Are you somebody who would be willing to make that big bet on the end? I mean, there's a lot of different approaches. People will lay up, get their NHC seat. People will just take what they can out of the prize pool. But, is there some part of you that wants to get the big prize and might approach it more aggressively because of that?
I am that guy, which is why I have a bunch of zeros next to my name from playing previous BCBCs. I mean, the way I tend to view a live bankroll tournament is that I've bought poker chips basically, and I can't cash them out. I know I can, but I don't approach it that way. If it comes down to it, I'll be someone. I'll have another zero next to my name if it doesn't go my way, probably. So.
You've been a big supporter of our horse players, happy hour events over the years. Encourage people to check those out. If you go to horseplayers.com, you can play. Jackson Muniz gave you credit for the strategy of using similar picks to try to really get up there with the tour points. And then he was hedging his bet and saying, I think I got that from Dave. I'm not sure. Is that something that you've done? Is he right to give you credit?
Yeah, a little bit. I the first couple of years I did the horse player happy hour. I definitely went with like different picks on the different entries, and I think I saw one person play 2 entries the same. I guess they deserve the credit more than me on that front, but I forget who it was. I'm sorry about that. But somebody did really well one week with 2 entries, and then they got both the points, and it got me thinking like, well, maybe I should just do it with 3, and then like if I hit it out of the park, great. But yeah, I mean, I think anytime there's a different format, you should, test what works for you. And the way I play feeders versus qualifiers versus whatever is different. And, to each their own. So, I hung out with a bunch of handicappers this weekend, and we all approach handicapping and contests a very different way. So it's
one of the things that's great about the game. The old Mark Twain quote comes to mind about, perhaps it's best that we don't all think alike. Difference of opinion is what makes horse races. That's paraphrasing, but it's what makes playing the horses too. So good to have you on. We'll ask you one last question. Give us a Breeders' Cup memory, your favorite one.
My favorite race of all time is Personal Ensign in the Breeders' Cup. Just because it's the one race, we saw Torpedo Anna just barely miss, looked like she might get there. Saw that with Zenyatta versus Blame. It looked like the same exact thing in the Personal Ensign race, and she actually got there. So that will always, well, I shouldn't say always, but it'll be hard to beat that in my memory.
I like that you're reserving the race when you actually win the thing, presumably, by saying that. Dave, great having you on here today. We'll be talking soon.
Awesome. Thank you for having me on.
That's going to do it for this edition of the BCBC Diaries. We encourage you to check out our sister show, Horse Players Happy Hour. You can catch it live on Breeders' Cup social media from 5 to 7. You can play the contest with us at horseplayers.com for In the Money Media and our friends at the Breeders' Cup. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatal. I'll see you on the leaderboard.